to Use What Works, an occasional video series where we're going to be checking in with folks who do open source and folks who do commercial open source and folks who are part of the sort of broader Use What Works, don't reinvent the wheel. Let's focus our energy on creating solid libraries that have established solutions to common problems, and everybody benefiting from that in whatever way makes sense to them. And joining me today is Jimmy Bogard. How you doing, Jimmy?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
So Jimmy is the best known as the creator of AutoMapper and second best known as the creator of Mediator. And so Jimmy, welcome to the show. So you and I first sort of became aware of you and the stuff you were doing through the alt.net movement, which some of the folks out there may remember. So this, for me, you know, I was building systems in .NET and I was like, C# is great, but web forms doesn't really work. Where are all other people who are doing the same kind of thing? What was your kind of exposure to that sort of nascent movement when that was happening?
So being from Austin, we had a pretty big .NET community there. And the Austin.NET user group was started by one of the folks that started alt.net. So we had a pretty good group of folks there. Scott Bellware lives there, lived there at the time. He was one that started the Austin.NET user group and started the alt.NET movement. But we also had a lot of other folks, like Jeremy Miller also is in Austin. So it was just kind of a hotbed of those kinds of folks that were talking about this kind of stuff. So I got involved pretty early on, like the mid 2000s, in the local .NET user group and the local Agile user group as well. Just trying to find other folks that were, you know, interested in building good software. And I felt like the software I was building sucked. I don't know if it's changed since then, but I felt it sucked then. So I was like, I need to find someone else that seems like they know what they're doing and try to learn from them.
I think there was so much, particularly kind of the early 2000s. Like, you know, the web was out there and everyone was suddenly like, oh, we got to build big client server applications. And, you know, there was the stuff that particularly Microsoft had a set of solutions like you do this. And I think a lot of folks, certainly I was in this position, was looking at that and going, this doesn't seem quite the best way of doing this, but maybe I just don't, maybe I'm holding it wrong, you know? So,
yeah, that's where a lot of the alt.NET stuff came from. Was like Microsoft at the time was not, they had some internal policy, legal policy. They weren't even allowed to look at open source code. It was like that time of, if we smell it in the room, it will contaminate the entire ecosystem. So they couldn't even look at it. Yeah.
Steve Ballmer, Linux is a cancer. like keep it away, which, because, you know, there are some perhaps valid there are scenarios in which if one of your engineers pulls some GPL code into your project, then you technically have to then publish all of your code because you're creating derivative works, but those scenarios are nothing like as prevalent as I think a lot of people believed they were.
No, so obviously we've come a very, very long way since then. But, you know, just being around for that very, you know, nascent open source era in the .NET space, Microsoft space was, I mean, there was a lot of work from the outside and from the inside to get to where it is today. So I don't know. Some folks think that like alt.net like lost, but if you look around, like everything's open source. Everything's free. All the tools we have, like, yes, maybe the debugger from Microsoft isn't open source, but like almost everything else is. So I think it won.
No, absolutely. That was I was looking because the MVP renewal cycle has just been through, and you know, a bunch of folks got renewed, and a bunch of folks didn't. And I was reading a post by one of them just saying, it's not, you know, it's still like, I appreciate what the program is doing, but so much of Microsoft used to be confidential. Like if you wanted to know what was going to happen in 6 months, the only way to do it was to go to the MVP summit and talk to people. And now you can look on GitHub and they've got issues. The code is there. They got the roadmaps. You can see
thousands and thousands of issues.
And, you know, like there are C# language features now which have a single GitHub issue going back like 6 years, talking about getting discriminated unions in and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's definitely fair to say that alt.net has one of the things they wanted to do was get .NET open source more widely accepted, and it's all open source now. So, but anyway, let's talk about. So, as you said, you're probably best known in the sort of wider .NET community as the person who created AutoMapper and Mediator, and I wanted today just to talk a little bit about what were you doing before you sort of started working on those. And then the journey from, you know, some code that you were using for, you know, whatever, to, hey, I should publish this. And then what were the decisions about, you know, the license you chose, making it free, and then subsequently within the last couple of years, kind of changing the licensing that applies around that? And what have been the implications of that for you? So start at the end. What were you
I
doing?
guess I was.
Mapper?
So like right before then, I was working for a product company and then big corp IT. And one of the things that I had seen then, this is like early mid 2000s, was the issue when you didn't have open source readily available to you. So and this is like our product company, we found some component we needed to use, we downloaded it, we used it, and then we saw that there was some bug in it, and then we couldn't fix the bug because it was closed source. So that's one of the first things, like, well, how do we use one of those old tools to decompile it and then fix the bug and then whatever? So you kind of have this first blush of like, oh, there's some critical bug that I wish I could fix. I don't necessarily want to like maintain that code forever, but if it's blocking me from getting this product out the door to my customers, wouldn't it be nice if I could actually make that change? So that's what I was doing like right before I joined the consulting company. But I got pretty lucky in that the consulting company I joined was the guy that hired me was Jeffrey Palermo, and he was also very big in the alt.net community. And so our very first projects, instead of choosing all the Microsoft tools, which were web forms at the time, like that was it. We looked at the Castle stack. So that's Castle Monorail, Castle Active Record, all that sort of stuff. And he had come from a background where like his previous projects, he worked with Jeremy Miller as well. They were already doing this open source stuff so everyone's like, well, yeah, the customer doesn't care. They just want something that can work and is maintainable and is super expensive to maintain. So
it's maybe interesting just because there's probably folks watching this who have never seen or used the Castle stack. And the Castle stack was one of those really interesting. That was the Microsoft way of doing stuff. And the classic, the thing I remember everybody coming up against, me, all the devs I worked with, was you get to a point where you're like, I want to write a unit test that uses the HTTP context. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. And you're like, but that's like everything is in the request, the form, the server variables, the headers, all that stuff is in HTTP context. What do you mean I can't unit test it? And that was just, if you wanted to do stuff with web forms, it led you down a certain way of building software that meant you couldn't test stuff. And Castle kind of came along, the open source project, and built on top of a couple of things. So there was the Castle microkernel, which was like a dependency injection, like a really the kernel of the thing. And then the Castle core built around that. Windsor was the whole IOC container, wasn't it? And then they had Castle Active Record, which was basically copied the Active Record pattern that was popularized by Ruby on Rails, on top of then Hibernate, which was quite an interesting abstraction there. And basically just kind of generated the appetite for a lot of these patterns like dependency injection and object relational mapping. And of course, what happens in .NET is as soon as Microsoft sees that there's an appetite for something, they go and they build one. And so you don't see Castle.
Well, it took a little bit for them to get there, though. Like that was the whole vote of no confidence thing, and the in Hibernate Mafia. So it definitely took a bit and that was like those internal struggles. I'm sure Richard Campbell could talk about them endlessly.
I'm going to get him on one of these shows one of these days, and we're going to talk through his history, because Richard knows a lot of the inside stuff that took place.
Yes. So that was like right when AutoMapper was we were looking at building a tool to solve a specific problem. That was also right at the same time that Scott Guthrie demoed ASP.NET MVC. The very first one. So we had built projects at the consulting company on Castle Monorail, and they were like, wait a second, they're going to build one, and we don't have to, like, it wasn't necessarily a Microsoft versus some other open source thing. It's just, I also know that, if it's blessed by Microsoft, it's just one less conversation I have to have with the customer. It's just one less thing I have to deal with.
There's always been and I don't know how true this is, but I've heard from many people inside Microsoft, oh, we have to because we've got clients who can't use third-party software. I'm like, well, okay, maybe you do. I don't know. I have never been that customer, but all right, you do you. And
I know, and they do npm install blah. I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah,
you just got 1,000 other things that are external. So that was like right at the same when this AutoMapper thing came about. We were also already adopting, the very early versions of ASP.NET MVC, which weren't open source yet, but all the other stuff on the ecosystem was going that direction. So we were using Net and N units, I think, or MB units.
Yeah.
So we like a lot of our stuff in Hibernate, we're using in Hibernate. So a lot of the stuff we were using was already open source. So when we were looking at this tool to solve this specific problem, AutoMapper, we did have this question. There was, well, what do we do with this? It's a library that we knew was not specific to the business problem of our customer. And we thought we would want to use this on the next project. You know, we don't want this code stuck inside client code. So the very first thing we did was just simply build it to the side. You know, don't you not on the customer's dime, on our free time, build it to the side so that we can then incorporate it in there. And then the question was in our company, okay, now what? Okay, we've made this external library. What do we do now? But at the time, our company, I was like employee number 6. So at the time we had like 10 employees, and we weren't really looking at selling, like becoming a software company and a consulting company when there are only 10 people. That's just way too much to do. So like, yeah, just throw it on, you know, just make it open source so that we don't have to worry about this question for now. We're just like, just make it open source. For nothing else, the code doesn't belong to the customer. It belongs to, well, the world, I guess, but we can at least use it on the next project. That was the main goal, was just, let's just be able to use it the next time.
At that point, was there any consideration about copyright? Like, you know, even giving it away for free, but, you know, one of the things that often trips people up is that free software is still copyrighted, because you can still say, well, it's free, but it's free because this person owns it and they say it's free, or this company owns it and they say it's free, or it's free under certain circumstances. Was there any discussion about whether this was going to be like the company owned it, or whether you owned it, or did any of that come up?
Yeah, it did. It did like right when we had to say, okay, we need to put this code somewhere. Well, under whose account do you put this code under? And now, like right away, we have to have the decision. But yeah, at the time we thought, you know, if we try to put this under the company name, then again, it's a confusing, like, well, what do? Are you a consulting company that builds custom software, but you also have this other random thing that you're doing? So we thought it would be better for the library if it's actually under the individuals, because we at the time were also trying to build our own personal brands in the community. So like Palermo, for example, he'd been doing that for years before I joined. So for him, it's just kind of an obvious, like, we attach it to people that are at our company because they're going to be Microsoft MVPs or are already. So they'll have a bigger name anyway. So that was another just sort of like, it'd be better to attach it to the name of an individual than a company if you want these to reflect well on the company. Because his idea was like, we can also attract people to come to our company because, hey, we also allow you to work on open source. But if it's like company open source, then they're like, okay, it doesn't have that same sort of feel.
That's funny. I remember many times going through the same, when you identify a part of a solution that you're like, this is actually, like, we can't sell this, but other people might be able to use it. Shall we put this out separately? And, you know, creating the distinction between this part is work for hire for that customer. Oh, but by the way, it incorporates this thing, which we built at the weekend, or we built on Wednesday afternoons, or whatever, creates quite a nice separation. And it's funny you mentioned kind of personal branding, because I've certainly worked with folks before who are like, can I put this out on my own GitHub? And we're like, yeah, I guess, you know. And I think there's certainly earlier in career, there's a little bit of all of us that's like, I want to be an open source maintainer. I want to have a project.
There were, I mean, I gotta admit, there was a little bit of that for me. My main focus was just, well, one, I thought it was a cool tool. I'm like, I think other people should use this because it helped solve our problem well, other projects are on. And then also the time, like Microsoft put out this framework, the MVC framework, but they didn't have any, unlike Ruby on Rails, which is highly opinionated. The Microsoft framework had 0 opinions. It's just like, here's a set of tools, you build whatever you want, however you want to do it. And so there was a lot of us like, well, how are we supposed to build these things? So we were also just, you know, out there trying to share how we had built systems, and the AutoMapper tool is just kind of one of those things that we were using to build maintainable MVC systems.
Cool. So AutoMapper is out there, and Mediator, similar sort of, you know, origin story.
Pretty much. I guess the only difference, like, was I was very eager to push to put AutoMapper out as open source, because it was open source is very new at the time as well.
Mhm.
So there was a little bit of like, I don't know, you want to be the champion of open source as well. So you're like, oh yeah, like I have this thing as well. But with Mediator, it was a little bit different because by the time Mediator came out, I had already gone through many like bad, I would say negative experiences, but many lessons learned from open source with AutoMapper. Like just going through the normal progression of, I'm so happy that anyone's interested. I'll take every pull request that comes my way. And I did enough of those that after a while, I'm like, actually, this is work. I have people emailing me and I'm on projects. So I would only really work on these projects during work hours. It's like between projects, the company allowed us to work on open source because it, helped the customer, helped us, helped the individual too. So I get these like, yeah, this code that you merged is buggy. I'm like, oh shoot, that's not even my code. That's someone else that gave this code to me. But now I have to maintain this forever. So the Mediator was a bit of the opposite, where AutoMapper are super eager to get out there. Mediator, I think it took like 3 or 4 years internally before my boss was like, Jimmy, this is like the 8th time you've copied this code. Just make an open source package, and just don't accept every pull request. You can you can still have new open source projects without like just like having so much of a headache on your hands.
So it then ticks along for, I mean, it's got to be about a decade or so, right, of this being out there and being open source and free.
I think so. I can't remember exactly when that got pushed out, like maybe 2013 or something, 2012. I don't know. The years all blend together when, especially that tool that we had started an earlier version like 5 years before that, and it didn't work well. So that was like the 3rd or 4th rewrite of that. But yeah, I'd say 2012, 2013, I think somewhere in there. So yeah, about 10 years or over 10 years now. Jeez. Yeah.
And so it's out there. It's accepting occasional pull requests, shipping new versions. Lots of people using it. Some of them using it well. Some of them not using it well. Everybody who has ever used AutoMapper, I think, at some point has been like, I could do really interesting mischief with this thing.
Yeah, we did that too. We did that too.
So then, talk us through what's happened in the last couple of years.
Well, yeah. So just to rewind a little bit, about 5 years ago, I quit my job at the consulting company I was at for, let's see, I've got a little Lego man here that says 13 years. They gave us little Lego bricks with a minifig and little bricks for each year. So if I forget, I can just look over and it says 13 years. So I decided to go independent. I wanted to scratch that itch and see how that would go. And after about 5 years of doing that, and I felt I was really enjoying it. You just like, okay, it's been 5 years doing this. You kind of look back and say, well, how has it gone? You try to be a little reflective. At least I was. But one of the things I saw was that I looked at my GitHub, the stupid graph of like commits over time.
The little green bathroom files?
The little green, exactly. So I looked at it and realized like it was almost completely gray. So prior to going independent, between projects, I would work on the open source stuff, like whatever it was. So it could be like, I don't know, I've got 3 or 4 other open source projects we're using pretty constantly on projects. So I'd be like, okay, now that the end of this project, what kind of things that we extended with this? How can I incorporate back into the open source projects? But when I went independent, what I didn't realize is that I wasn't going to pay for my time to do that anymore. That is, if I'm between projects, I'm looking for the next project. Like, 'cause that's my livelihood. So it wasn't even intentional. It's just, that was my default mode of, I've got a contract ending. I need to find the next contract. So I'm not spending my time on open source. I'm spending my time putting food on the table. So that was a big thing, kind of like
the interesting kind of themes that starts to emerge when you talk to people. You realize how many even quite high profile open source projects out there survive because of somebody having a paid office job that has a bit of downtime in it. And so they get a couple of hours every week where they can just, fix vulnerabilities and merge pull requests and update docs and those kinds of things. And, all it takes is either they get really busy or they have to get a different job. And suddenly it's like, oh, well, there's no succession plan for this thing here.
Yeah, the whole burnout aspect of it, that really didn't hit me until I was independent and I didn't have an employer that was basically sponsoring my time. And it wasn't just my time either. The company I was at Headspring, um, who doesn't exist anymore, they would sponsor the employee's time. So if you wanted to work on a project, you would come to your manager and be like, okay, this is one of the things I want to do to help further my career. So it's even part of your, what do you call, like your, see, it's been too long since I worked at a company. I don't remember what they call these things, but it's like these, these things that you wanted to do to help further your career. And so they would actually sponsor your time to say, okay, this is something you can do to further your skills, whatever. But I wasn't, because I didn't have that anymore. It was just this big void that that I didn't fill with open source. It was just working on company stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until like years later, and you go look at the GitHub thing, like, oh, that's a lot of gray there. didn't even realize that had happened at the time. It's just, you just kind of look back and like, oh, okay. So yeah, I last year, or really started about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Once I looked back and saw that nothing was happening, I realized I needed to do something with it, or at least make a decision. Either I could decide to do nothing, which would be valid as well, and just do the normal yearly sort of new .NET, release drops. Let me go update the things. But even that, I wasn't really on top of, because it just wasn't a priority. Unless my direct clients were using the things I was responsible for, I wouldn't touch it really. Just be like, not my problem anymore. Just let it sit out there. Or I could do something. And I decided to at least investigate the commercial routes, because it wasn't like downloads were going down. They were still like going, they're still increasing over time. Yep. So like, well, there's not just continued interest, there's growing interest.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of stupid of me just to let this die when clearly people want to use these libraries.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's when I started the journey of the commercial route. Is okay, let's investigate what possible options are there out there for me to go, and how can I make this a more sustainable project? Yeah. It doesn't require an employer to directly hire me to do this.
Yeah.
One that can just kind of live by itself, stand on its own two legs.
So one of the things that we are trying to do with the whole Use What Works initiative is, when people, I think the two things that we're trying to do, one is to make sure that when a developer hits that point of, hey, I should put this on the internet, this might be useful, to get them to think at that point, one day I might want to charge for this. And just kind of like don't promise the world it'll be free forever, because you can absolutely say, look, this is a beta, it's free while it's in beta, it's free in preview, it's free up to a certain thing, I might change it later. But just to sort of not fall into the trap of thinking, because we've all been there, it's fun, you enjoy it, it's great, I want to do this, open source, yay. And then 10 15 years later you're like, no. But then the other one is when they do get to the point where something has the adoption and the maturity that there's potentially revenue stream in it. There's really no kind of common like best practice on how do you approach that. What do you need to set up? What do you need to do in terms of making sure you've got the copyrights and the domain, all this kind of stuff. So how did you tackle that part of the process?
Like a lot of things, I deep dive into what other people have done, just the space that so a lot of what I did was just interviewing other folks that had made that same journey to see, instead of just me copying what you're trying to do without really understanding what went well, what didn't go well. Let me first understand the space and see if there is, what kind of business model could exist, and what have other people tried, and what worked well, what didn't work well. So that was just the first thing, of just talking to other people that had gone through the same same journey.
Anything in that process that really took you by surprise?
After the fact, for sure. So I got talked to Udi Dahan, who had gone through this journey way before. Like, he was like one of the OG people that went through this journey. Yeah. Right? His commercialization journey was like 2010, which is kind of crazy. Like, that it did happen and nobody cared. Like today, people would be having a conniption fit, but back then it was like, oh yeah, of course, people charge for software. That's what you do. Like, it was not a problem at all. But he told me it's like, you're about to become an enterprise software company. And I'm like, no, this is just to build software. I'm just going to put a link on a form online and let people buy it. And, then I can just primarily, that was, he was right. Like there's a lot of this that is just the business aspect of it. That is nothing to do with the software itself. It's just the nuts and bolts of running a business. So that was probably the biggest thing I was surprised about, which should have been. I don't know why, because these are enterprise. These are IT enterprises that are using the software. So of course, like I have to get involved with this this process. But that was probably the big surprise was.
I think there's a great article that's been floating around for decades about why you have to sell toilet seats to the US Navy for $900. And it's this one guy saying, look, we all know that a toilet seat costs $10, but to sell a toilet seat to the Navy, you've got to get this certification, that certification, guarantee this many units, this delivery time, this time scale, this support, this contract, this background check, that background check. And, I often think that it's, the cost of doing business in the software industry has nothing to do with delivering the software. It's someone's got to pay for the number of hours that it takes to get to a point where you can say, you give me money, I give you code, thank you very much. And
that whole aspect of just the pricing aspect of it was a huge challenge because, I'm starting with a blank canvas. Okay, I feel like I had the guess that the companies that invested their time into using these libraries would then pay for them because they're in production systems. But how do I charge for that then? What model should I exactly use? So I also just talked to folks of, how do you figure that out? How do you figure out what model to charge for? And I knew I wasn't trying to, rake people over the coals here. I wasn't trying to retire off of this. It was more just, I wanted to make it sustainable. So you have to charge enough to make it worth not just your while, but also make it worth the people that are going through the purchase process.
Yep.
If you just charge $10 for it, well, that's not worth the other person's time to even go through the process of getting it approved. So you have to charge it enough to make it worth everyone's time involved.
Was it
to make the purchase process?
It might have been Troy Hunt, might have been Todd Gardner. I remember somebody saying it's $100 if you pay with a credit card, and if you want to pay by company invoice, the minimum order is 10,000.
That's
they're just like, nope.
Yeah.
If you just want to go on Stripe and give me the money, take the code, you're done. If you want to go through the process with the banks and the valid, then no, I'm not doing that for $100. So
yeah, that's another thing that I've had to figure out as well over time. Just like accepting every pull request in my early projects, I was accepting everyone's procurement process without tracking it back to the actual contract values. So I'd have cases where I would accept anyone's legal changes, for example. But those are very expensive conversations to have with a lawyer going back and forth. So there were times when I was 10 rounds of back and forth because, giant corp IT will want you to take all the risk. I'm just one person. I can't do all that. So you get to the end, you realize wow, the lawyer charged me this, but they are only paying that. That was not worth my time to spend on that. So there's definitely some of those okay, I do need to sort of calibrate the customer experience based on what level they want to buy into there. So that was one lesson of okay, I should not just for what the lowest amount is, just let them dictate the whole process.
So how much like nowadays, if a new customer wants to get on board with AutoMapper and license it and everything, how much of that is bespoke to them and their process, and how much is you just saying, nope, it works like this?
Like I said, now it depends on what sort of thing. So I've become intimately familiar with everyone's procurement process everywhere. I know all the tools now, I'm logged into, I don't know how many different procurement vehicle, whatever. So some of them are fairly straightforward, but if someone wants legal changes for whatever reason, that's the most expensive, slowest conversation, slowest process. But a lot of times it's just someone needs a bank letter and okay, now that almost everything has APIs and stuff, most of this can be automated. So that is one nice thing about sort of the age of Claude and AIs. I can build all the automation to do most of the stuff I need to do, provided I've I take the time to describe what is the process I want to automate and think through that sort of stuff.
I've had the same really great results using Claude to build little tools I use myself for stuff I don't want to do manually. And it's not stuff I'd ever sell, and it's not stuff I'd ever ship, but it saves so much time. So And that actually gets us nicely onto one of the other things I wanted to ask about. How aware are you of people being like, oh, well, I don't want to pay for a license, so we're gonna use machine learning, we're gonna use Claude or whatever to just reverse engineer or replace it? Is that something that has sort of come across your radar?
I mean, it has. I mean, I will have that come up every now and again, even with conversations with folks of just like, here's the price, and they say, well, we can just do it with blah blah blah. Like, well, then do that. I don't care. Like, you either buy or you don't. You either see the value in what I have or not. But I'm not gonna. There's not. It's not worth my time to try to convince every single individual user to like, okay, here's the value. So I even have that myself on projects I've been on. I've had customers like, "Oh, do we need this specific dependency? Can't we just have Claude generate this code for us?" But I don't know that we had the similar kind of thought process when we were deciding what code to open source at the consulting company I was at. Was if we let this code live just bespoke inside one specific customer, then it can never be improved upon. It just sort of snapshot in time. It'll never be improved or extended except for inside that one specific customer. But when at a consulting company, we've got 10 or 12 different simultaneous projects, that's a lot of different opportunities for us to harvest learnings and improvements and enhancements. So that was one of the big things why we were building open source in the first place was now all like it's the rising tide can lift all boats. All the projects, all the users can make the whole project better, but that code living inside one, it can only ever be that good. So we definitely saw that with both AutoMapper and Mediator. Was just I can iterate much better if I have lots of different users and I'm able to pull those things in and then push them back out to all the users. But for folks that just like, I just want to copy this code and put it in my code base, like, well, that's great, but you'll never get any of the learnings and enhancements that everyone else is getting by using one common central source of truth for this code. You just have your one-off. So
one of the things that I quite enjoyed about, particularly the modern .NET platform is stuff just gets faster. There are so many things over .NET since, version 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What are we up to 11 now? Did 11 just come out?
November, I think. There's a beta out.
Yeah, but there are lots of things where they're just like, hey, this thing, it's faster now. And it doesn't break. There's no API changes, no regressions. Just install the latest version of the package. And boom, suddenly stuff is faster, which means more responsive, means you're spending less money on cloud and compute and all this kind of thing. And yeah, I absolutely, one of the themes that comes up again and again is people going, well, I can just copy the code. It's like, you can do that with this code. And also, with license changes like, AutoMapper, I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there going, oh, we'll stick on, was it version 12, the last one that was
something like that?
Yeah. Whatever the last free version was, we'll just stick on this one forever. And it's like, well, yeah, but, there's good stuff happening and you're not getting any of it.
The one I didn't quite get, and this I think this may be from my first experience with open source, which was some closed source library has a bug. I can't fix that bug. Yeah. So I wanted open source strictly so that I can fix that bug. Yeah. Which that was the original promise of open source, is so that you could fix it. Yeah. So when we changed the license to it's basically more restrictive copyleft, dual license is the model I went for. So it's still open source, still a open source OSI certified license. That is like, well, nothing promised was taken away. I promised via MIT that anyone can fork, modify, sell as well. That's like literally in the MIT license. Anyone can sell this. That's still there. Like it's all, you can fork it and go. What isn't going to work though is like me maintaining it for free in my personal time. Like I got other stuff I want to do. Like, I don't know. GTA 6 is going to come out soon, so that's just going to occupy most of my time for a long time. So it's not my hobby. It's not my thing I do in my free time. So
it is. I mean, the freedom to sell, that's one that people always miss. They're like, free software, free, it's great. It's like, free to sell it. Like, what do you mean I'm free to sell it? I'm like, yeah. And you go all the way back to Richard Stallman and the Free Software Foundation, and he always had this rather perhaps naive but idealistic view that there was value in creating the software, not in distributing it. and you could absolutely write software, give it away for free, and people would come back and pay you to improve it or pay you to make it better. And maybe, what we're seeing now with more and more libraries going hybrid license is a little part of that finally kind of playing out. So,
well, it's funny too. This is not remotely limited to the .NET space. Like I always hear, like, oh, Java has this. Like, there's just the problems over there. Maybe they're in different places, like maybe databases and things like that. But like those problems actually exist everywhere.
Yeah,
like, people complain about Plex, which is open source, and they charge for it too.
Yeah,
and like, this is everywhere. This is not everyone's hobby is to work, write software in their free time. I mean, if it is for you, that's fantastic. But like this is,
I mean, the ones that I've been following a lot of interest. One is Redis, who went from it's open source to it's open source unless you're Amazon. Because the thing that's been playing out a lot is companies going, well, look, we give it to you for free, but we didn't give it to you for free so you can charge people $100 a month to use it. Like, we give it to you for free so you can build a product, not just so you can sell, or not even sell, you can rent our code on your infrastructure, and you make a lot of money and we don't make anything. Redis went from open source to a hybrid restrictive license, and then they went all the way back and they went, no, it's GPL now. Amazon, if you want to run Redis, you go for it, but you got to publish all your monitoring, your dashboards, your billing, everything. And WordPress was the other one that went through just a unbelievable round of suing bits of their own community, shutting down, taking control of plugins. So yeah, it's not limited to .NET at all. I think that the whole wider industry is like, people are making millions of dollars off our free code. How do we get some of that?
And it's one thing if you're an NPM library like LeftPad that like does one little thing, whatever. It's like, well, that should just be in the platform or the framework itself. That I get that. But it's when you start to do these bigger set of code bases like AutoMapper or Mediator, or like whole databases, you're like, well, that's not code I really want to maintain myself. Like, I actually don't want I don't want that code bespoke in my system, please.
Cool. All right. So I guess final question. If you could send one piece of advice back in time to the point where you first started putting all this stuff out in public and putting it on GitHub and sharing it, what would you tell past Jimmy?
I would say don't get on Reddit at 2 a.m. on a red-eye flight to London, because I put a comment out there as like, if Mediator, if I ever charge for Mediator, I'll make a T-shirt or something like that, or tattoo it on me or something like that. But I wouldn't like, when did I, because someone gave me, I did AutoMapper Mediator commercial at the same time, and someone found this old comment, and I was like, when did like, it sounds very glib and very off the cuff, and not something I tend to put up. They looked at like, when was that? It's like, oh, it was 2 a.m. The internet finally started working on the BA flight from Austin to Heathrow. Like, oh, why was I on Reddit at 2 a.m. on red-eye flights? But of course, I write something ridiculous that comes back to haunt me. So I'd be like, no internet on overnight flights. Just, watch a movie. That's good enough.
Good advice. Cool. So, folks, this has been Use What Works. Check it out at usewhatworks.org. There is a manifesto. You want to get your name on the site and support the stuff we're doing and the conversations that we are trying to encourage. We'd love to see you on there. If you want to chat to us about any of the stuff that's come up in this show or any of the other stuff we're doing, get in touch. GitHub issues are open. Emails are open. We'd love to hear from you. Jimmy Bogard, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today.
Yeah, of course.
And all you folks out there, you look after each other, and we'll check in with you next time. Take it easy.